What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another week, another episode of The Blade Dive. I'm Parker Bohan, your host, and as always, I'm excited to have you tuned in. This week's episode is, man, this dude was on my list from the get-go, and I'm stoked that he has finally agreed to come on the show. So we'll get into that, but first I want to say thank you to you for tuning in. None of this would be possible without you. If you're listening for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. I'd be excited to have you coming back every single week. And follow us on social media at The Blade Dive. If you're sharing photos, tag us. Tell us what you got going on this summer or winter, depending on where you are in the world. Okay, my guest today for episode 18 is John Swartz. And man, this guy has been on my list since day one, and I'm so stoked that he's agreed to come on the podcast. So he's got some deep stories and some interesting things to say, so I'm excited for everybody that's listening. John is originally from Cape Cod, Massachusetts area and transplanted to South Lake Tahoe with his parents at a young age. He's always been interested in machines, starting out with cars and bikes at a young age, and quickly developed kind of a skill set for working on them. His first job was actually at a car dealership, and that didn't last very long. So quickly took an interest, obviously, in the area, and was paying $1, I think, as we get into it, for ski lift tickets. So took an interest in Heavenly and their shop and transitioned over there to start his first gig working on Snowcats. Yeah, pretty dope. John has since then gone on to start up the shop for BR in Reno, work with brands like Prenoth and SPT, and is currently contributing to Sugar Bowl's team. Okay, you know what to do. If you're at home right now, go ahead and grab your favorite drink, kick your feet up, and if you're in the machine anywhere in the world, turn up the volume.
Give it the juice. Already.
Okay, here we go. Back in the virtual booth tonight with, man, a dude that has been in the game for quite some time. So, and he's been on my hit list for people that I'd love to have on the show, but he's been kind of elusive, a bit hard to track down. And he's finally agreed to come on the podcast, and that's just organically at his own accord through listening to episodes and maybe getting a little nudge from me and other folks. But it is John Swartz. And man, Swartz has been around the game for a super long time, starting up BR's office in Reno, working with Prenoth over the years, a 28-year career there. And man, it's truly an honor. So I hope we get into the nitty-gritty, man. And I'm stoked you're on the show, John. Thanks for being on.
Well, thanks, Parker. That was a great intro there. It's an honor to be on the Blade Dive. You've had some amazing guests, and hopefully I can live up to the show.
No, never an expectation. And I already know you're a fantastic storyteller, so I'm looking forward to the conversation. I do want to give a thank you to our sponsor. This podcast, The Blade Dive, is supported by Prenoth. Prenoth backs The Blade Dive, so make sure you give them a shout out and a thank you for doing that. You know, John, I think one of the coolest things that we've been producing here is the special guest question, and we've been kicking off the show with those just to kind of get the storytelling rolling. I don't think it's anything out of your realm that you can't hit out of the park. So are you cool with that? Jumping right in. Special guest question. What do you think?
I'm okay with that. Sounds good.
That is awesome. And today's special guest question right out of the gate comes from the legend himself, the man, the myth, but the reality, Mr. Mike Binnell. So I'll play it for you now.
Swartz, listen. That's the set of keys you gave me. I think we actually traded for a crappy pair of sunglasses. I definitely got the better end of the deal there. I want you to talk about the history of that keychain. And I'm glad you're on. Welcome to the Blade Dive. I'm glad you're on this show. Finally, there's somebody older than me as a guest. But my Blade Dive question of the day for you is, why in this day and age at ski resorts are mainline groomers and the park groomers, some of these guys get along, within the department. And then at other places, these people can't even be in the same room. And I want you to put your twist on that. Thanks for all you've done, bud. You want those keys, you got to come out to Pyramid Lake. Don't be afraid.
Oh my goodness. Love that guy. He's real. That guy's real. There's no doubt about it. The key, I got to think about the keychain a little bit. I don't remember what I gave him. I think I gave him an old Bombardier, kind of a rare keychain, with a set of, master keys on it, so he could get into basically any pre-knock machine and get it started. So
a bit of a trophy for his career. Yeah.
Yes. Anyways, the sunglasses are a funny story. They SPT had partnered with Oakley, and they had made SPT branded sunglasses, and I wanted a pair of those bad. And Gunny kept telling me they're for employees only, Swartz. If I give you a pair, what about everybody else that's asking? And I'm like, listen, man, I got you into nice cats. We're supporting your events. Then they told me they were out, and that they'd get me a pair. And I begged Binnell for months and months. And I finally get a pair. And we decide to go paddleboarding. My daughter wanted to learn how to paddleboard. So we go paddleboarding. This is the very next day. And sure enough, I fall off the paddleboard with my glasses on. And I can assure you they didn't float.
Oh, that sucks, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So then it took me another 6 months to coax another pair out of Mike. So there's the sunglass story. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that sucks, man.
It was horrible. I was devastated. So, yeah, I finally got my SPT sunglasses, and I had them for less than 24 hours.
Damn, man, that's heavy. Super unfortunate, but I mean, guess it wasn't meant to be. I will say that I am no good at managing nice sunglasses, so either new or nice. Yeah, I have been unsuccessful at that. My wife will attest to that. I will say, though, Mike, picture or it doesn't exist. Send a photo out there for the internet world. What do you think, Swartz? His other question, pretty much the relationship dynamic there. Alpine Parks, what do you think?
Yeah, I want to see what he's got. So, anyways. Yeah, and I can assure you, I rented that paddleboard for an hour, and I spent the whole hour circling the area where I fell trying to find those glasses. But I couldn't dive deep enough to get down, stay down there long enough to find them. So it was a bad deal.
Yeah, dude, heavy. Maybe just stay off the paddleboard from now until the near. Yeah, when you get better, I guess.
So, to get into his question, boy, that's a tough one. And I understand what he's talking about, because in my travels, with Bombardier and Prenot over the years, I definitely see what he's talking about at different resorts. I think, you and I talked about this a little bit the other day. I think early on, when parks were first starting, when it was becoming popular to have a park and build a park, bringing a lot of creative young people in, that like to ride, that were snowboard enthusiasts, and didn't have a lot of grooming experience. They were coming in and wanting cats. They were taking cats away from the free groomers. I think the free groomers felt they I don't know if the word is weren't worthy, didn't have the experience. They're beating up our cats. There was a lot of that going on. And I think some ski areas figured out how to bridge that gap. I think it fell back on the leadership. Like the park thing is here to stay. Let's support these guys. They kind of made it their culture, where other places, it's just not the culture. I think the places with the big parks, your North Stars, Breckenridge, Snow Summit, Bear, the park department was big and almost as big as the grooming staff. And I think that they had to bridge those gaps, but some areas just haven't. I think the feeling is still there. The park guys are going to take our cats. They're going to beat the shit out of them, and they lack the experience. They're not part of that good old boy club. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I am not on board with the good old boy club. You think you got your shit together because you've been in the industry for so long. Pfft. I think that I've learned something new every single time I've walked through the door. And I think you've got to be that type of person as a manager and as an operator. I'll weigh in here and just say that wouldn't it be better if you had an issue, if you just headbutted it with somebody like total Binnell style, just come and talk to me, dude. Like let's not create unneeded drama, you know?
Oh yeah, I would, I would never let that go. I would never let that go on, because it just creates tension in the workplace. It's not good for anybody. At Sugar Bowl, the our park groomers, and our park offering isn't huge. It's something we're working on since I've been there. But the park groomers, they sit in the grooming meeting. Our terrain park we have a mountain operations meeting every day at 3:00. That includes ski patrol, marketing, myself representing vehicle maintenance, our mountain manager, our director of operations, basically every department, even our HR department is on that meeting. And it includes our terrain park manager. So, and we all discuss any events that might be coming up. They start out every night with the grooming report. What are we going to groom? What's being groomed tonight? Lift ops, chimes in. Hey, we need work piles here. The ramp here is a little bit steep, whatever it might be. But it starts right there, and it includes terrain parks. And then after that meeting, we go downstairs. The groomers start rolling in about 4:00, and Josh, our grooming manager, and myself have offices upstairs above the shop. We go downstairs and we meet with the groomers, and I try and be in those meetings as often as I can. And those meetings include the terrain guys, and we talk about what they've got going on, what machines are available. I let them tell me if they're having ongoing issues with the machines that maybe aren't being addressed. We talk about, what it takes to keep a fleet running and all that stuff. I have a shop that's supposed to have 6 guys. We ran this winter with three mechanics. So the groomers may write up something over and over. Might be a window that doesn't stay latched, or a door that rattles, and we just can't get to it. But I go into those meetings and I let the guys vent, the groomers, and try and understand the importance of it. But I also let them know, hey, look, we had to change a drive hose on this machine. We had a blade hose on this machine. This machine was pulling to the right. We spent a few hours on that. So I'm sorry we didn't get to the rattly window, or whatever it might be. But that keeps the communication alive, and communication is huge. It's huge, and bridging those gaps that might happen between parks and free grooming, or parks and the shop guys, etc.
Yeah. And I mean, you bring up a good point there. I don't think it could just exist between Alpine or fleet and parks. I think it could exist between any department. And I think that I agree with you. Hitting it head on is going to be more effective than just letting it fester. So whether it's you're in the 21st century Zoom room, or you're face to face, or I've been a part of what you kind of described there as like a meeting or a snow plan meeting in the past, where you're given the opportunity to discuss issues with other departments or planning. And then you can, after that's over, take it offline and sit down and discuss what it would look like in detail amongst the two of you, or amongst a small group. So I definitely think that that's a key way to attack discussion. Confrontation is sometimes super awkward, but I think it can also really be a skill building moment for defining or redefining that confrontation, and saying, okay, it's not going to be easy, but we're going to move forward with it. You know what I mean? I think it's just hard sometimes for people to headbutt something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, big thank you to Binnell for contributing to the podcast once again. So thank you, sir.
Yeah. Love the guy. We worked a long time together. He was the SPT rep that we did all the coordination, that I did all the coordination with, in terms of getting machines moved, making sure they were running and getting serviced, all that kind of stuff. So Mike and I spent a lot of time together, in person or on the phone when their events were out of state. But been out to Mike's house shooting guns, maybe drank a little alcohol at the same time. He's a great man to be around.
Yeah, for sure. Deep blade dive there from Binnell, no doubt. And just who he is and what he's all about, that was an awesome contribution. So once again, as we roll through the podcast and I surprise you with maybe a couple of things, it was awesome to have him kick it off like that.
That was a great question. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, so, deep blade dives right off the bat from Binnell, taking large.
Yeah, right off the bat. Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Well, John, you know the deal on the blade dive. We take the time to get to know you and dive into your story. It's a cool component of the podcast. And for the folks that don't know you, I'd be excited to have you tell us a little bit about you, your story growing up as a kid, however far you want to take it. But paint that picture of John Swartz growing up. What did that look like? Share a bit.
I was born in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. Moved to my dad packed us up and moved us to South Lake Tahoe, California, when I was about 10 years old. So I basically grew up in South Tahoe until I went to work for Piston Bully in 1986.
Wow.
So yeah. So love Tahoe. I reside in Reno now because, like I said, I moved down here to go to work for PB. But I still get to the lake often. I work at Sugar Bowl, which is up at the top of Donner Summit, pretty close to Tahoe. But so I grew up at South Shore. Kind of my home resort was here at Tahoe. We lived down at the foot of the hill in an area called Myers, right before you climb up Highway 50 to get to Sierra. Couldn't convince my dad to buy me season passes every year. So believe it or not, I'm going to age myself here a little bit. But the high school I went to, South Tahoe High, actually had a ski hill up behind the football field, and it was $1 a day. And
hell yeah,
and it had a PAMA platter lift. It went right up the middle of two runs. If you got off and went to the right at the top, you were on the beginner run. And if you got off and went to the left, that was the advanced run. And there wasn't a whole lot of difference. But anyways, it was $1 a day. My dad, most of the time, would give me and my brother money on a Saturday and Sunday. And he wouldn't even give us a ride. We had to hike up the road, probably close to a mile in our ski boots. Carrying our skis, and it was uphill getting there, which was good because when we retired, we got to walk down the hill to get home. But anyways, they did have a little lodge at the bottom. They sold hot chocolate and hot dogs, but that's where I learned to ski.
John, that's rad, man. I mean, growing up in that era of what was the industry, experiencing that stuff had to have been super cool.
Yeah, looking back, it was pretty cool. At the time, we dreaded the hike, but we wanted to ski so bad that we'd do it. So, and you know what's funny? I mean, you look at skiing then versus today. When they made the runs, of course, they cut down some pine trees, and we used to use those trees as a takeoff. We'd form a jump off those trees, and then if they caught you jumping, they'd kick you out for the day. They'd go up those shovels and knock it down. Now today we're building stuff. It's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so would you dub some of those things or those experiences as the most memorable times that you had growing up in the area or the region, or no? What do you think?
Oh boy. Tahoe is an amazing place. Obviously it's beautiful. It was very small at the time. It's busy now. A lot of traffic, a lot of tourists, especially on the weekends, holiday weeks. Trying to get in and out of the ski areas can be extremely difficult. But used to get a lot of snow back then too. Whether you believe in climate change or not, they don't get the snow they used to, especially at the lake level. At that elevation. But I used to dread because my dad, he definitely made me shovel. Me and my brother, we always had to shovel after a 4 or 5 foot dump. So I guess that brings up bad memories. But
yeah, for sure.
But at least I'd get my $1 to go ski and a couple bucks for a hot chocolate. So
still a W.
Yeah, but Tahoe's an amazing place to grow up. A lot of good times. South Tahoe High was a pretty small high school. I don't remember what my graduating class was, but it was under probably 200.
Wow.
Yeah, and just great memories of high school. Great memories. Um,
Super cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
really rad. Well, I have to ask too. So, growing up, experiencing the area, and knowing the jobs you worked, you have to know that place like the back of your hand. I'd have to assume. Is that correct? I mean,
Oh
damn.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And so,
yeah.
I mean, as a kid growing up and you're experiencing the Tahoe area, maybe it was at a young age or older. Was there ever an interest to go elsewhere? Was there ever an interest to go explore like Colorado, Idaho, wherever that was?
No, I skied for fun. Not like a lot of your other guests, that got into ski racing and events, and it was just kind of a hobby for me. Uh, I got into, I got my first job learning how to wrench when I was like 13 at a friend of mine that lived behind me. Her dad owned an auto shop, and he was paying me whatever he was paying me, $10 a day or something, to come clean cars and help him out. And he taught me how to change spark plugs and do brake jobs. And so I got into I got into dirt bikes, snowmobiling. When I got into high school, I got into muscle cars big time. That was probably my biggest hobby. I bought my first car. I bought a 70 Roadrunner with a big block when I was 15. Didn't tell my dad. He came home from work and it was in the driveway. That didn't go well. But started racing when I was 16. Started drag racing. So probably a little bit more of an interest there. But of course, in the winter, muscle cars aren't real practical. So, I would work and then ski. And like I said, Sierra was kind of my home resort. A big treat was going to Heavenly. Went to Heavenly a few times a year. Love those places. We used to go over to Boreal. They had an alpine slide. And my buddy,
Oh, dude, I remember those things, like the little stick between your legs, lever, forward to go faster, backward to
oh
brake.
yeah, oh
Dude,
yeah, we used to try and figure out, we just got our driver's license. And we used to figure out how to get beer. And then we'd go over and sit in the Boreal parking lot and get tuned up a little bit. And then we would just go ruin that place. You're supposed to wait 30 seconds before you go after the guy before you went. And we just take off like 10 seconds later and try and catch your buddy in front of you and slam into him. Um, oh
dude.
yeah, I flew off the track a couple times. We
Wow.
used to get these big down jackets and elbow pads because we knew some of that wasn't going to end well. We got kicked out of there many times.
Well, I didn't know that existed there, so that's rad. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
But it's fair to say equipment was a part of your life early on.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Definitely
Yeah.
mechanically inclined very, very early on. Very early on.
Right on.
Yeah.
So, how did you take that and transform it into what it is today, with respect to your career and everything else you've been involved with? I know you said you worked at the dealership and they were paying you whatever they could pay you, but was there ever an interest that like sparked the snowcat world or the snow industry? How'd that go?
Yeah, like I said, I bought dirt, a couple of mini bikes and a snowmobile, an old AMF snowmobile. If anybody remembers those, the same company that makes bowling balls and pins. But that snowmobile broke, and I had to take it apart. I didn't have any money to fix it, so I just took it apart myself. Figured out how things work. I think it was the carburetor, and just tried to figure it out, put it back together, and get it running. And like I said, my neighbor, he owned a shop, and he kind of took me under his wing. And then, in high school, we had an auto shop. I took auto shop for 2 years, and then became an auto shop aide. We had ROP Auto, which was I forget what ROP stands for, but it was basically, you know, setting you up. It was school for setting you up for a skilled trade. If you're not going to go to college, if you're not going to Harvard or something. So I became an aide in ROP Auto. So yeah, 4 years of heavy auto shop. And then I did get a job at a Honda car dealer that opened in Tahoe. The service manager there had a falling out with the owner. He went and opened his own shop and took me with him. And Mike Goldman, never forget the guy. He took me under his wing. And, he taught me how to really wrench and diagnose and read a multimeter and read drawings. And, that carried me a long ways through my career. So, after I parted ways with Mike, I went to work at a Chevy Toyota dealer. Got some factory training from Chevrolet and Toyota, mostly automatic transmissions. But the dealership, you work flat rate, you get paid by the job, not really by the hour. I was getting all the shitty jobs because I was the low man on the totem pole, so I wasn't making a lot of money. My wife at the time was working with this gal at a retail store, and her husband ran the shop at Heavenly Valley, the Snowcat shop. And we went out for drinks with them one night, and I was telling him what was going on at the dealer, and he said, "Man, I need mechanics bad up at Heavenly. Would you consider moving?" And I said, no, I don't know anything about diesel tractors, diesel engines and hydraulics. And he says, "Oh, dude, I'll train you." He says, "I'll tell you what, I'll get you a lift ticket. You come up and ski for the day. Just come by the shop and check it out." So I thought, wow, free day of skiing at Heavenly. So I took him up on it, and I went toward the shop. They had just finished a new shop, so fairly state of the art. They had added on to their old shop, so it was a pretty big shop, fairly state of the art. Yeah, but he took me for a ride, and he let me drive an old Piston Bully 200, and I'm talking an old 200, like built in the late 80s, and or probably mid 86, 87, U-blade, no flex tiller, rear lift frame doesn't steer. But I fell in love with that machine. It was like, holy cow, it's like you're gonna pay me to learn how to work on these. And I mean, I fell in love with it right away, Parker. And I went back to the Chevy dealer the next day and gave my notice, and went to work for Heavenly.
Wow, what a story! We got to tell more of those. But so backing up to the car thing really quick, I want to talk about that because it's not like it's a mega hobby. Like you're pursuing it, or you've raced, you've competed. Maybe help us unpack that a little bit. You're racing, what's involved there, and that whole deal. Because that's you're a really good driver. I think that's what I would boil it down to.
Yeah, I think I do pretty good. We that's what I was telling you about the high school days. I had a lot of fun, but I bought my first muscle car when I was 15. I got that thing, running and cleaned up. And when I got my license, it was funny, in school, it's probably the same way today, but you have your jocks. I call them the stoners. I don't know if that's politically correct, but there was a smoking section at the school, and they'd all go out back and smoke pot. But we were known as the motorheads.
Right on.
So
That's cool.
I hung with a group of guys that were other car enthusiasts, and dude, it was a competition right off the bat. Whose car was faster, and we street raced regularly, almost nightly. And if you got beat by somebody, you tried to tune your car better, or you saved your money and bought performance parts and added it to your car so you could beat the other guy. And I'm a competitive person by nature, and I didn't like losing. And so I worked on my car a lot, and I learned a lot, about getting performance and tuning, and learned a lot about driving. And, I street raced, and I don't advocate street racing anymore. I do all my racing on the track, but, times were different back then. But, I street raced in Tahoe, street raced my buddies regularly, but we used to come to Reno and race. You just cruise downtown Reno, and you could find a race. And then you get out there, and there's other guys out there. And if you beat one guy, then you got to go race the next guy at Reno, Sacramento, Modesto, Auburn, California. We got in a street race in Auburn. It was funny. I went down there. A good friend of mine, he actually builds my engines now. This is a guy I've known since middle school, and we still race together. It's absolutely amazing. But he lives in Sacramento now. But he moved to Auburn our senior year, and I went down there to visit him one weekend. We were just cruising around Auburn, kind of cruising where all the guys cruise, and I got challenged to a race, and there was this guy, Weddle was his last name, and he was the fastest car in town. And I told the dude, hey, I just want to race Weddle. I don't want to mess with anybody else. And he's like, well, you got to beat my Camaro before you can even talk about racing Weddle. So we went out, we raced. They raced out by the airport down there. They had a quarter mile marked off, and I raced this guy and kicked his ass. And so they called this guy Weddle, and we met, whatever it was, 11 o'clock or whatever, out at the airport. And I was a nervous wreck. It's like, man, am I going to lose this guy? And of course, there was some betting going on. I think I bet him $200, which was a lot of money back then for me.
Oh yeah, it was for sure.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, Parker, a dead tie at the end. And we turn around and come back to the starting line, and his buddies are like, pay up. And my buddy, me and Steve are there. No. I think I won, and it's like, I told the dude, I said, I think we tied. We should race again. And while we're all down there arguing, here comes the cops. You can see lights, half a mile, quarter mile away. And there was probably 50, 60 people out there watching that race. And yeah, you talk about a mad scramble, everybody running for their cars. So I got my car. I took off. I'm like, holy shit, my dad's going to kill me if I get another ticket. And I took off, and a cop started chasing me. So I flipped a Yui, and he flipped a Yui, and he backed up. It was a 2-lane road, and he backed up, and he backed into a drainage ditch. The cop, I'm looking in my mirror, and I'm like, shit, he's not coming. My buddy Steve was with me. I said, shit, he's not coming. We slowed down, and you could see the car just sitting sideways at an angle. His back tires were down in the ditch. It was hilarious. So I just drove away, nice and nonchalant.
Yeah, you were like, nothing to see here. Don't worry about this. We got it. It's all good. We out.
Totally got out of it. Got out of it.
Well, I have to ask too, and you mentioned the high school parking lot with the smoking section. Were you ever the car that was smoking out the smoking section with your burnouts? Maybe you're laying some hot rubber. I don't know. Just got to go there.
Oh, Parker. Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
I had to ask. So tell the story.
So I was kind of known as the burnout king. I love doing burnouts. I still love doing them. I'll send you pictures. But yeah, we used to sit at the car dealer, and I called it smoky tire burnout mix. But I used to mix like different kinds of oil, and hey, we'll take a little ATF and we'll shoot some WD-40 in it. Yeah,
WD-40.
We'll add a little 90 weight, whatever it was. I used to make these different batches, and then we'd go up to the high school parking lot. We'd put some of that oil under the back tires, and then just power stall the car. Oh yeah, clouds of smoke. Yeah.
Well, I had to ask, dude.
Yeah.
I had to ask. If you're you got the car, you got the wheels, you're probably spinning them at some point in time. Man, we're moving right along. We have another special guest question, and it comes from Mr. Eric Rosenwald. And I know that you and Eric spent some time together in the past, kind of diving into how you could further develop the machine when parks were kicking things off for just their idea. So I'll read what Eric's got here. Here we go. Eric says, remembering back to the late 90s, it was an exciting time to come into the industry. As terrain parks demanded dramatic improvements in the equipment, it was amazing how BR brought operators together from all over the world for roundtable meetings with engineers, regardless of which color they preferred, yellow or red. You were a big part of that effort at Bombi, and the modern machines we take for granted today are in large part directly attributed to that effort. Pretty rad. Eric goes on to ask, do you ever wonder on what trajectory grooming equipment would have evolved had terrain parks not come into the picture? Eric also asks, what was the craziest idea someone threw at you for machine development? That is another deep blade dive question. Stoked Eric's contributed.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's good stuff. Yes. Another great guy. Love Eric as well. I was really interested. It was a big part of selling vehicles in the West for me. Even early on, before I was selling, Chris Perkins and I opened the Bombardier office in Reno in 1990. and Chris saw that it was happening and it was real. The parks were here. It was going to grow in popularity. And then I carried that on even in my service days as the service manager. I did a lot of demoing for Chris. And yeah, I used to sit in the cat with Eric if we had a demo when he was at June or at Boreal. I'd just sit on the passenger side, just start bullshit with him and let him do his thing. And I'd ask him when we got in certain situations with the cat, or he was trying to do something. I'd say, what if we did something to the cat? What would it be that would make this easier? I used to just pick his brain. I did that with many people, but Eric was always very patient and wanted to get his ideas out. If the first part of that would be if the parks hadn't come on and gained popularity and building freestyle terrain didn't get to the level it was, I think that you would just see the groomers would have evolved pretty similar to how they are today in terms of free groomers, non-park cats. I think there are, and it was always my goal, which is one of the things I'm proud of in succeeding, to have a crossover tractor. So in other words, when I was pushing Bombardier to build a true park cat, I felt that it would be ideal to have a park cat that could also go free groom, or vice versa, a free groomer that could run in the parks. So there's stuff that's been done to park cats, I think, that may not have gotten done, on a free groomer, or certainly wouldn't have gotten done as soon as it's got done. I think, with the Bombardier Snowcat, probably the comb retainers, how the rubber mats, when you back up with the takeoff, the rubber mats would suck under. And if you weren't moving forward, the comb would suck up into the tiller shafts. Probably wouldn't have seen comb retainers. I suspect the sharpness and the shape of the blade teeth today that run on all machines are a direct result of trying to make a more aggressive blade for freestyle type grooming.
Yeah, and I think when you have a need, when you're trying to reinvent the wheel, there's definitely got to be a need there. But I think if there's not a demand kind of right behind that need, then obviously the development of things is going to take obviously far longer than they would. Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah.
And that's not to say that it would never have gotten there. I believe that with the existence of parks and the need with the demand, things move rather rapidly. And I think Eric's on point there.
No doubt. Because I'll tell you, Parker, that, PB came out with the Park Bully first, through some work with Josh Chevy and Mammoth. And, they were gaining market share with that cat as the more and more people started doing, terrain building. And, to be honest with you, I was nervous about it because, I had, North Star was 100% pre-knot, Heavenly, and they start looking at the park cats and it's like, shit, I could lose some market share here. This isn't good. Yeah. I don't want PB in my ski resorts. Right. And, so I started pushing, Bombardier really hard, hey, look what they've done. We need to do this too. And, part of the struggle for myself was, Bombardier was, headquartered in the East in Quebec. And, I think the freestyle terrain, I think you would agree, was really taking off in the West at first. And, trying to get the engineering to come out and, look at this park cat, look at they're doing, look at their building, they just wouldn't, they wouldn't do it at first. We were dealing with a little bit of old school mentality in terms of the engineering staff at the time. So, but for sure it became a race, because when we did lose some market share, that gets their attention. And, I finally got engineering on board, but, the very first, Terrain Master. People might remember our first attempt was the Terrain Master on the BR 275. I got engineering to build a big blade. Chris Perkins and I did, and we put it on at Reno. We had to come up with the first long lift frame. It was that double acting depth cut cylinder. So you would put the tiller up all the way, then put the depth cut up all the way, and then we had this switch on the dash, and you can make the depth cut go up even more. So it really gave the illusion the tiller was going super high, like the PV Stinger type tiller was. And the problem, and it worked good as you were coming down the hit, but as soon as you got through the transition or leveled out, of course the tiller shafts were buried and the comb was in the air, so but it was funny because Chris and I wanted to build a park cat, and Chris came out one day and said, okay, here's our demo. I really plan on doing a lot of park demos this year. And he said, we got to fix this thing. We got to make it work, besides the graphics on the doors and the big blade. And, so he challenged me to come up with the comb retainers, which I eventually did. And I said, okay, how much time do I have? What's our budget? And he says, you got a week, and we have no budget and no overtime.
No way. Holy cow. That's wow.
Anyways, we came up with the double depth cut cylinder. Engineering did help me with that. And I did make the comb retainers. Engineering did refine those eventually, but the very first comb retainer was made out of fishing line. I used really thick fishing line from the fiberglass conforming bar out to the comb, and it held the teeth up, and it was pliable enough when you put it down, but it made a little bubble on the mat, if you can envision it. When you put the tiller down, it'd leave a little indentation. So the first try didn't work so good, but I don't know if you remember, but the early Bombardier tillers, they had thick rubber stiffeners out at the ends of the rubber mat at the very end. So if you brushed them up against a tree or whatever, it would help from keeping tearing the mat. Well, those were retrofitted. They went to the urethane ones, which were a much better fit, cheaper for us to build. And I had pulled some of those off some of our customers' cats, some of those old rubber ones. And I'd put them upstairs at the shop, and we were testing the urethane ones. And I started thinking, man, I bet them rubber stiffeners that were out on the ends would work pretty good for this. So I went and grabbed some of those, and I put them on our demo, and they still today use rubber stiffeners for the comb retainers. So, again, sitting with Rosie, with Coop, Jeremy was on, I sat with Coop, JP Martin. I mean, the list goes on and on. Binnell, Elliot, from SPT, a lot of time with Elliot.
Elliot Cohn.
Yeah. Elliot Cohn. Yeah. Do you know what his first name is? Harless with an H. Harless. Yeah. So if he's listening to this, he's going to kill me. He's going to fly to Reno from Colorado, and I'm a dead man. But anyways, love the guy. Awesome guy. Great operator. So anyways, in those days, I'd just go out and ride around with people and listen and take notes. And then I'd go back and if it was something I couldn't do, I'd try and push engineering to do it. So, that was the evolution.
Well, the smallest details can make the largest impact. So, yeah, good on you, man. Probably maybe rocking some 1X tippet line to get that shit to work out. Hell yeah. Do what you got to do. What about the craziest idea that anybody ever threw at you? What you got there?
There's one that comes to mind that always made me laugh. It was JP Martin. JP wants to build the bubble cat. He wants a bubble cat. And that he derived that from better visibility. Because you're always when you're backing up, you're always turning your head and looking through the back window, and you can't see that good. Your neck gets hurt. He wanted a bubble cab, like a glass bubble, like a helicopter. And he wanted the bubble to rotate. So when you went into reverse, it rotated around so that you could see behind the cat. And then when you went into forward, it rotated back to the front of the machine. It's
wow. Damn, dude.
So then And then Rosie wanted to build one that comes to mind from Rosie is the flat HPG. So Eric wanted to not have a radius. I don't know if you'd call it a pipe anymore, but he wanted flat walls or angled walls with no curved transition at the bottom.
Yeah, like a hip cutter.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, I think we posted some pictures of that with the one that I think Cooper was trying to piece together. There may be a photo of the one out there that Eric was trying to piece together too. I might hit him up, see if he's got any photos.
Yeah, no, but yeah. So Eric, when he was at June, he was pushing for that hard, and if I remember correctly, he was trying to get Bombardier to help him out. But I think I wound up giving him some parts and some mechanical advice, but he took off and ran with it. So that was at the time I thought that was a pretty crazy idea as well.
Yeah, super rad.
Yeah.
I do have one last note from Eric, and it says, "Those were super fun times as everything was evolving so fast. The constant flow of new prototypes to play with and getting the opportunity to be heard and respected as a park operator. Thanks for all your support over the years, and congratulations on the success of your racing team." Pretty awesome.
That was support that we got, as park building and demand for park hats got more and more popular. Bombardier did, they came around and said, okay, yeah, this is real. We got to figure this out. And they were really good about it. They said, let's just get everybody in the same room, and they get a big whiteboard up there, and you guys start firing ideas, fire ideas at us, and you weed out the unrealistic stuff. If you hear something more than once, that was always my rule of thumb. If I was out demoing and I heard something 2, 3, 4 times, then, that's something that needs to be done to the cat. And that's the stuff that I would go fight for.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Go after the stuff that's definitely attainable, stuff that's tangible that you can actually achieve. I think before we get too far along into this, let's jump into the push road question of the day.
The push road question of the day.
That's right, the push road question of the day. And we did something different this week. We put it out there on Instagram as to who the guest was going to be. And, man, we got about 35 inquiries, which was dope. So let's keep doing that. I want people to feel like they can be directly involved in this thing. So we'll keep it moving that way. Posting it on social, in the stories, before the recording happens. So today's question, I picked a couple. We'll just go with 2. Comes from Peyton McCormick, and he asks, John, will you ever forgive Rick Peony for buying a 200?
Oh boy, I'll tell you. But I would have expected that question. Never. So Rick Peony, he was the operations manager at Hoodoo for a long time, and we went in there and demoed and sold Hoodoo a cat, and then we sold him a couple more, and I built a very strong relationship with Rick. Just a really another neat guy, real character. And Rick moved on from Hoodoo at one point, and then wound up over at what's the ski area up there, northeast, by Baker City.
I'm drawing a blank.
Shit.
Anthony Lake. Anthony Lake. Yeah,
Ski Anthony, I think they call it now. Rick wound up over there, kind of a small resort, really nice little quaint resort. Rick wound up over there, and he bought this 200, and yeah, man, I went off. I feel kind of bad. I've never done that to a customer, but him and I were pretty tight. He's like, John, calm down. But I did forgive Rick. We saw each other at a PNSA show, and we walked out back and had a little heart-to-hearter. And I apologized to him, and he apologized to me, and we went and had a beer. So love Rick to this day.
That's awesome. I figured it would be a good question. Shout out to Peyton. Peyton does have another question. Question number 2. How many pieces of equipment have you sold throughout your entire career?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Man, I was the service manager from 1990 till 2004. And so I sold from 2004 until 2018. So 14 years. I would say, there was really good years and down years, but I would say I averaged about 40 or 50 a year, probably an average of 50. So times 14, 700.
Dude, that's a lot. That's a lot of pieces of equipment, and that's even considering, a ski resort's investment and the turnover of machines too, how frequently they buy. So 700 machines, holy shit. Next push road question comes from Cody out of Canada. Cody asks, biggest head scratcher of a problem to find, diagnose, or repair, computer glitch, etc. So what you got there, John?
So when the cutter market started taking off, what was that? Half pipe cutters, 94, 95. There was the Pipe Dragon, and then there was a guy, Steve Rankin was his name. He made a cutter for a couple of years called the Scorpion, and North Star bought a Scorpion. And this guy that was building the Scorpion, he was the mountain manager at Boreal, and wanted to kind of, do the freestyle terrain thing at Boreal, and, thought the Pipe Dragon, was a kind of a farm built machine. So he, in his garage, he designed and built this machine called the Scorpion, and it was the first one with a snowblower on it, like the Zog is today. So anyways, so North Star buys one of these Scorpions. They order a brand new cat, and they wanted the cat outfitted to run this front attachment, and there was some people that thought, I asked Steve, what kind of gallons per minute does that Scorpion need to operate properly from a hydrostatic pump? And from there, I could figure out what size pump it needed. And so we had an option for a 75cc, and I had run this by engineering, and I had run it by Steve Rankin, the guy that built it, and they both thought we should run a 100cc pump. Well, I had tried putting a 100cc pump in a cat before, and they just don't fit in the frame behind the drive pumps. And so I did the math, and I worked with a local hydraulic shop here in Reno Hydraulic, and I knew the owner really well. And he was an engineer. He had a degree in engineering, and we agreed that a 75cc pump would work, which I could order from the factory instead of trying to put a 100cc pump in Reno, in our little shop there. So anyways, we ordered the cat with the 75cc pump. We delivered it to North Star. We put the Scorpion on it, and the thing blew snow about 10 feet, maybe 15. And, my boss, Chris Perkins, was there. The grooming manager from North Star was there. It was a big deal. The mountain manager was there. They wanted to see this thing run, and it was throwing snow about 10 feet, totally underpowered. And so I got all this pressure on me. I got all these people. I start making sure everything's plugged in, trying different things, and I just couldn't figure it out. And it got to the point, Chris is over there. What's going on? Jesus, everybody's here to watch this thing. And I said, you know what? Take everybody to lunch. Get out of here. Give me some time. And I didn't figure it out the first day. I did stroke the pump manually though, and the thing would throw snow a mile. So I kept telling Chris, I said, something's wrong. Something's wrong in the computer or the electrical system. And I went to Reno Hydraulic. I borrowed a flow meter to see what kind of flow the thing was putting out. And so, I went back up the next day, and putting a flow meter on a high pressure pump like that's a pain in the ass. And I had to get all the right fittings together, blah, 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 on and on and on. And then finally I got to the point where I was checking the output out of the computer. So, and again, this was 95. It was the first year of a computer-driven Bombardier Snowcat. So I finally figured out how to get in the screen and look at the output to that pump. And I should have been getting 95 milliamps. I was only getting like 65. So I got my multimeter out. I checked the voltage right at the computer. It was 95. I started tracing it back. And there's anybody that runs pre-NOS, especially 350s, will remember this. There's a red kill switch for the tiller, right? So if you're tilling along and you get in a rock garden, you can reach over and hit that little red button and the tiller shaft stops. And then you can pull the button out and the tiller starts spinning again. Well, that has a light bulb in it. And when I wired it, I put a kill switch in case something was going wrong with the cutter. When I wired it, I ran the power wire coming out of the computer that's supposed to go straight back to the hydrostatic pump. I ran it through the light bulb. So a light bulb acts as a resistor. That's how a light bulb works. Yeah. So it was resisting the milliamps down to 65. So I bypassed that switch and voila, the thing worked.
Wow,
so,
John.
Yeah. So this was a big deal. It was hard. And it really was kind of hard to figure out, but in the end it was super simple. So I don't, that was a head scratcher that comes to mind. There's so many of them though.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, but that's a good one though. So it took you 36 hours to figure that out, walk away, and then come back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a lot of pressure because I was being questioned big time because I didn't put a 100cc pump in it. But we really needed to know because we wound up selling other machines, including a Zog, where Zog felt we needed a 100cc pump too. And I could guarantee you every pre-knot cat that's out there running now that spins a Zog is a 75cc pump. Because of the research I did, and I had the guts to try it.
Wow, what a story! It's little stuff like that. Yeah. Well, just real quick, going back to like the little stuff, the details. It's just stuff like that keeps me wondering how those things came to fruition. Real quick, you and I were catching up, or maybe not real quick, but as in much detail as you want to go into. You've said that racing, drag racing in general, has become more of a family-involved thing, and so I kind of wanted you to talk to that as much as you want to share.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a lot of fun. Like we were talking about, my youngest daughter likes to come out to the races with me. It's funny when she was young, I like to go out and watch some dirt track racing. Sprint cars and stuff like that. I've never raced anything like that, but they had a nice dirt track outside of town here. And when she was young, I used to take her. I think she just went because she wanted to get ice cream, but I could get her out of mom's hair for a while and go watch racing. But so she kind of grew up around it. And when I got back into drag racing and decided to build a car and start, racing in the NHRA, what they call the ET bracket series, which I do now. She'd come out and cheer dad on and help clean the car or whatever. And so I asked her if she wanted to try it, and she did. So we bought an old 76 Plymouth Duster. It was kind of ugly, faded cream color and had some primer on it, but it got her out to the track and she cut her teeth in that. And then when I left pre-knot, I decided to take a little bit of time off. It'd been 28 years, between when I opened the store for Bombardier and, we were required by pre-knot. It was a 28-year run. So I decided to take a little bit of time off. And I was bored actually. So I tore her car down, stripped it completely. We painted it, got it looking nice. And then shortly after that, then she wanted to go faster. She wasn't happy because she was one of the slowest cars out of the track. So then, we built an engine for it. And I changed the engine and tranny and rear end. And I made that car. It doesn't just look good anymore. It's pretty fast. And she's learned how to drive it. We had a points race a couple weekends ago out in Fallon, Nevada, out east of Reno is our home track. She made it all the way to the final. It was her first final. in her class, and she came up a little bit short. She ran an awesome race, but just came up a little short. But I was so proud of her, and the smile on her face. She was so stoked, Parker, so stoked. I mean, it's amazing as a father, and I'm just super, super, super glad to have her involved. And and my girlfriend, she comes out to the track. She helps. She supports me the late nights in the garage. She helps clean the car. She gets the motorhome ready. Because we stay out there usually 2-day races. But she also keeps track of my data for me. So when we get our time slips, she keeps track of what I'm running. It's the weather has a lot to do with how the car's going to perform that day. There's a lot of strategy involved in terms of tuning the car properly for the weather as the weather's changing during the day. As it's getting hotter, the air is not as good. The car doesn't run as good. So you have to, change your dial in time a little bit. My girlfriend has made a spreadsheet. She keeps track of that for me. So on my qualifying passes, I can see what the car's doing, what the weather's doing, and make judgment calls from there. So yeah, it's a family thing.
Very cool. And it's Swartz Racing, correct? It's your name and racing. So it's your team.
Yes.
Everything involved. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. And so our home track, like I said, is Fallon. But I like to go race in Sacramento. A guy, my buddy Steve, that builds my engines. I've known him since grade school. We race together. He races the Summit ET Series in Sacramento. I go down and join some of those races. I race in Reading. If you're in the top 3 points in your class at your home track, each year they have a division final. That's usually in Vegas. That's a very prestigious track to run. That's where the professionals run there twice a year. So got to race Vegas a couple times. We were in Bakersfield at the Auto Club Formosa Raceway last year for the finals. That's a 4-day race. Didn't do too good the first 2 days, but I finished really strong. Had a great day on Sunday against the best of the best from the whole West Coast. So a lot of fun.
Very cool. The fact that you've got the family involved and you're winning and doing your thing on the track, it's dope. Super cool. I got to ask too, pink slips? You ever raced for pink slips? Ever been there? Ever titles, whatever?
No, like too much time and money invested in my cars to race for pinks. I've been too chicken to do that. So anything can go wrong at any time. And even if you're confident you could beat a guy, if your car decides to something, a fuel line or a coil goes bad or whatever, half track, you're in trouble. So racing's a bit of a money pit. So I definitely don't want to give away a car.
Yeah. No, hey, listen, I had to ask. See it in the movie. Yeah, well, also, too, like, you seem like somebody that's definitely willing to put their money where their mouth is. And you believe in what you do, too. So I think throughout all the stories and everything. But best not to put everything up for bet.
That's exactly right. At any time, I don't. Racing's a money pit, and I don't have a lot of money, so I gotta keep my car. So no pinks.
No pinks for Swartz.
No pinks.
Yeah. Well,
great question.
Well, I mean, I had to ask. You're in the racing game. I'm sure you're, like you've said it before, you're a competitor. But you've been so many places resort-wise, and you've met so many different people. You've been around different machinery. You've been around different shops, different styles of management. And I guess I kind of state all those things because they all have different personalities. And I know you're willing to discuss, or maybe you aren't, but if you're meeting, let's say, for example, the park world for the first time, or you're meeting somebody within the alpine world for the first time, that operator, depending on where you're going, you're going to have a different set of circumstances that maybe somebody has developed an opinion centered around. And I'd like to know what that was like, because you're going from spot to spot, or event to event, or demo to demo. And depending on who you're running into, I mean, it could make for a really great night. It could make for a really great day, but anything that you're willing to share there too, with respect to just personality type, man, that had to have been difficult at times.
Oh yeah, oh for sure. I mean, I always used to joke around with some of my colleagues at Prenoth, some of the sales guys. Like I told them when I retire, I'm going to write a book about demoing.
Yes,
Just,
do that. Definitely do
oh
that.
my God, Parker, it's so interesting. Just from moving the cat, some of the adventures of moving out of one ski area to another, to the different personalities, the stories. I mean, there's you get in a cat with a guy that you've never met, and you just never know what you're going to get. You just never know. And I mean, there was a guy, Kaiser, at Mount Rose, and he was really into Sasquatch, like Bigfoot. Bigfoot is real,
I'd be
and
down to have
he,
that combo.
yeah, oh yeah, and he hunts for Bigfoot. I mean, the guy goes on and on for hours, So those were, just stories like that, over and over. Some guys, you're in the cat with them for 30 minutes and their life story, and you're just like, holy shit, And I mean, this guy's just going, but you get in cats with other people, and for whatever reason, their personality wise, they might just be a quiet person. There were times, I called it hostile territory. There were times when we went to one of our competitors' stronghold ski areas, and there were guys that didn't want us there. They, we don't want Prenoth. We're a PB hill, and it's like, well, hey, your boss invited us or whatever, and even to the point where they're defensive that they were buying the other brand, that they were buying PB or whatever. You got the whole spectrum. You got the whole spectrum. People's life stories, what they believe in. Uh, some guys would right off the bat start telling you, your cat sucks and this is why it sucks and this is what you need to do. And I'd be sitting there going, man, I'm 25 years in. This is his first or second year grooming. I don't want to insult the guy, but he really doesn't know what he's talking about. Those were pretty interesting nights too.
Well, so maybe a follow up would be, did you ever feel like a bit of a therapist to those folks that would?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
At times, absolutely. If somebody would ask my advice about, should I pursue grooming? Should I do this? Should I do that? If they ask, I'll give my opinion. If I'm comfortable with my opinion, of course. But yeah, I mean, just clearly at times, I mean, disgruntled operators asking about other resorts. Should I move to this other resort? What's it like there? What kind of equipment do they buy? What's management like? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I asked that. I mean, and we've kind of discussed. Yeah, we have. We have definitely discussed the conversation piece with operators like Harmony Johnson, and that discussion in the machine being either productive or unproductive. Some of the moments can be funny or enlightening, what have you. But it's kind of almost as if you're questioning or you're wondering what you're doing with your time. And so throughout your demo days, was there ever anybody that actually wanted to listen to you? I'm sure there had to have been some people that were going or saying to themselves, yeah, this would be a good idea. I'll listen to John. He can give me some input. I can figure out what the machine does, and we'll go from there. I mean...
Oh, no, for sure. Oh, for
Cool.
sure. Yeah, there was. I mean, there was some guys that embraced, having somebody from the manufacturer in a cat with them, and it wasn't just demoing. We would always, to all of our customers, offer operator training. Hey, if you got new guys and you want us to come do a ride around, and help out a little bit, so they're not, how training can be at some resorts, Parker, that, you do a ride around for a few hours and then they shove you in a cat in the middle of a pack and then start screaming at you on the radio,
Oh, training at most mountains for operators doesn't exist on the job.
Yeah. And I mean, part of keeping your customer happy is making sure that the equipment's running right, and they're going to get it. The operators are going to get a better experience if they're operating the machine properly. And I was always a big believer in that. I always spent as much time as I could. I like demoing because It was my time to spend quality time at a ski resort. So instead of just running in there for a sales call, trying to track down the director of operations or the mountain manager or, or even the owner, and just talking about, okay, hey, what are you guys buying this year? What's going on? Do we have a shot at it? And then leaving. Demo time it was always quality time, and I would spend that time in the shop during the day, and then with the groomers in the evening. And because a happy shop and a happy grooming team leads to a happy customer, because they're the ones that are telling upper management, hey, Preno's great. They supply us with parts. We got some great training out of them. The cats are doing good. You can really get your finger on the pulse by hanging out in the trenches. And then that's good info, to have in your back pocket too, because there was some shrewd business people out there, and they'd say, the guys aren't so happy with the cats and, blah, blah, blah. And they're just trying to get a better deal. And I'd say, man, that's not really what I'm hearing. I spent a few days here. Everything seems to be going good. Can you explain a little more? And they kind of backtrack out of that, and you'd get a more productive meeting. But, back to your question though, I could get in a cat and right away realize, man, this guy, he doesn't really know how to blade, or doesn't know his tiller settings that well. And, you have to approach that kind of gently, depending on the guy's personality. And you really don't know their personality that well if you've only been in a cat with them 15, 20 minutes. But I just say, hey, the approach I'd use a lot of times is, hey, our blade might be a little different, or the cat feels different. Do you mind if I give you a few pointers? And some people were, oh, hell yeah, come on, man, please. And other people, you could just tell they don't want, I know how to operate my cat. Don't tell me I'm doing it wrong. You got both ends of the spectrum there as well.
Yeah, and having an open mind to ask or inquire about how to run the new digital stuff, the new automated stuff, troubleshoot new things on new machines.
Yeah, and that's a key thing is, you gotta know everything the machine's capable of doing, to get the full performance out of it, which in the end gives you the best product.
Yeah.
So, I was really focused on that, making sure that everybody that was running the machine, especially going into an area like June, it was hard for us to get in there and it was hard to stay in there, because they were owned by Mammoth, and, Mammoth ran Brand X. They were Brand X's biggest customer at the time. So, we definitely wanted to make sure everybody was getting the most out of the machine as possible. And I think of a story again. We were demoing at Mount Rose, which also ran PB, and I got in a cat. And we try, when you demo, you try and get the experienced guys in it. It's really hard, to tell somebody, hey, you can't run it, or we'll do our best to get you in it. It's really hard because I know everybody's excited, wants to try the new machines. But I got up to Rose, and one of the experienced guys that was supposed to run the cat called in. So they put a first-year groomer in it. And this poor guy, we were pack grooming, and he was having a hell of a time climbing a run. And it was a run that I knew our machine would climb easily, free grooming. But he was happy facing the blade. And, he's just back on that box, and he's trying to get the blade to cut. And he's just, putting the blade down. Yeah, and it's just lifting the front of the cat up. I'm like, holy shit. I was like, this is bad. He's like, oh, this thing won't even climb. And we were in a pack there was a couple of PB 400s, and they're just jetting up the hill. And I was like, he was one of the guys. I said, listen, man, hey, do you mind if I give you a few pointers? This blade's probably different than what you're used to. Oh, no, fire away. So I gave him the whole happy face and speech, and we actually had him stop the cat. And I had him leave the blade where he had it, and I showed him. We got out and walked to the front of the cat, and I said, "Look at your blade wings; they're in the air, And I lifted the blade and showed him the block, that the base of the blade that he was riding on, and within a couple hours, man, that guy was blading like way, and he stopped the cat, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's the best advice I ever got. Thank you." Blah blah blah. It was, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, when somebody's receptive to feedback and you're giving it to them,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because I mean that person could have just have easily have said, "Nah, I'm not into that," but they probably didn't want to be embarrassed by not being able to get up
Yeah.
the hill. Yeah, so yeah, that's big that they were listening. One thing that I want to get into with you is the shop management piece. I know that you and I have talked offline about what it means to have an objective every night, you know, if you've got an issue in the machine, to get that machine back to the shop. But that may or may not be the best course of action. Kind of being that hero, I guess you could so to say, would not be maybe the best course of action. But whatever you're willing to dive into along your journeys with the different places you've visited, the shops that you've been a part of, shop management, either 101 or whatever you're willing to share, some of the takeaways, the highs, the lows, the experiences you've had throughout your career.
It's certainly, with my experience, I obviously I ran the shop at Prenoth for a long time, Bombardier and Prenoth for a long time. Little different. Most of our work was on the road. Summertime we would refurbish or service people's cats. But I traveled many ski areas over my career, and saw the successful shops and the less successful shops, as you would. I think the biggest thing is communication, Parker. I learned this at Heavenly early on, when I started there. When I started my snowcat career, it was interesting. There was some guys that have been there a long time. Certainly times have changed, but there was some amazing mechanics there. Well-rounded guys, that knew hydraulics and diesel engines, could weld, fabricate. But they were kind of, I loved them to death. So hopefully, if any of them were listening, they don't take this wrong. But they were kind of stuffy old dudes, and grumpy old guys, like I'm becoming in my old age. But they, the feeling at times where the operators were idiots, So, a guy would come in and he'd say, "Hey, my oil gauge is fluctuating." And, the mechanics would be like, "Oh, that guy's just a fucking idiot." Excuse my language.
No worries. You curse on here, man. No worries.
Yeah. But, that guy's an idiot. He writes up everything. He's a pain in the ass, and, it was interesting because I was working days, and then our night guy got hurt. So I volunteered to work swing shift, and I thought it'd be cool. I'd just get up and be able to go drive snowcats around while the hill's closed, and go rally snowmobiles, catch a little air, stuff like that, stuff that goes on at night at a ski area. But it was interesting. I decided to, on a slow night, I decided to go out with one of the groomers, and I did that a few nights actually, and I learned it's like, man, if there's a set of lights out or the heated mirrors don't work, it's a pain in the ass. It's a major pain in the ass. And I started thinking about it. The other thing is, the operators spend 8-10 hours a night in a snowcat, probably more time than they spend in their own car. And if something isn't right, they know it. And I started thinking, this he's in this machine every night. If he says there's a rattle or a creak that's normally not there, we probably ought to go check it out, and that became a big deal. And it's something that I preached in all my trainings, all my service schools that I did over the years, was, you gotta believe the operator. And if, there's some true knuckleheads out there, but you got to learn each guy, and kind of weed through it, but you got to believe them and you got to address it. And that reduces downtime in a big way, Parker, in a big way. If a guy's hearing something that's abnormal and you just let it go for a week, it bites you in the ass every time. So trusting the operators trusting the mechanics, good communication. Heavenly, uses a really good logbook that stays in the cat. And the operator does their pre-op checkout as they're operating the machine. They do their post-op. There's a comment section, so the operator might, if there's a problem with the cat, they can write it in the comments. Well, the back page is in the book is like a binder. So the back page is the checkout section for the mechanics. So they do the checks on the cats, and then they address any issues that are on there, and then write what they did, or if they need more information. And that stays in the cat because, as you know, the operators don't always cross over with the shop. And that stayed in the cat. So you could leave messages for the operators could leave messages back. Good communication tool there. But you got to build a strong relationship between the shop and the mechanics. You can't have the mechanics saying, the operators are idiots. You can't have the operators saying the mechanics are idiots. And it's huge. It's huge. That's the first component of success in any shop. Respect gets respect. And so, the operators need to keep the cat clean. They need, no sunflower seeds on the floor or old sandwiches behind the seat. If you're a mechanic and you got an electrical problem with the heated seat or a throttle pedal problem, the last thing you want to do is crawl in there on the floor and have somebody's sunflower seeds or an old sandwich. You know what I mean? But on the flip side of that, the mechanics have to do a thorough job of checking out the machine and communicating back, with a good attitude. So, that's a big part of it right there.
Yes. Communication is huge. We've talked about it a bunch on this show. Very cool perspective there. And in this day and age of the instantaneous portion of communication, where you've got text message, email, you've got all kinds of different apps out there. I know I'm familiar with Slack is an app I've used before in the past. It's different look and feel, getting used to something like that, but you create you don't have any excuses at that point. You don't have any excuses for not communicating. And I think as a shop manager, as a director, as a ops manager, whatever you are, it really gives you the opportunity to be constantly in the know. And I think that is, that's big. So it's kind of like not reading your notes or your cliff notes. Well, hey, I put that on the web board. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It allows you to just be constantly present, even if you're not there. So you can still have an idea of what's happening. So the excuse of, well, I didn't have time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt the communication is really good now. We just bought a new cat at Sugar Bowl, and we're adding part of our deal was we added in the tracking of the machines, fuel use and engine RPMs and all that stuff. But it also has a platform for the daily checkouts, so it's all going to be electronic. I'm really excited about that. So can't wait to dive into that and start using it. So, and the other thing, Parker, is some of the breakdown can be really poor write-ups too. The advice that I like to give operators is, don't say, for example, the blade's fucked up. That's your write-up is the blade's fucked up. Well, what's fucked up? What isn't right? You got to give the mechanics something to work with. So, a little detail. So in other words, when I'm pushing uphill, big blade of snow, it lifts a lot slower than normal. Give them something. The mechanics, they respect that. One word of advice to the operators, though, is don't diagnose it for them. Mechanics have big egos, right? And don't tell them how to fix it. Just tell them what's wrong, but give them good detail.
Absolutely. Because it can send them down a rabbit hole that maybe they don't necessarily need to even explore. It's kind of like saying, well, my machine's not firing up. Well, did you check fuel? Maybe. I don't really know. And then they end up taking apart the top end of the engine,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Each machine has its own personality, and as a shop, you get to know the machines a little bit. And they really do. Each machine has their own personality, and there's favorites among the groomers, machines that seem to run better. Um, I don't always believe in that. They're the exact same machines; they should run right. If one's better than the other, then you need to dig into it and find out why. But and that brings me to another point. Something that I always preached is the operators need to get to know the machine. They need to know the terminology. If you say the lift frame is coming up really slow, but you meant the push frame, well, you got the mechanics on the back of the cat looking at the lift frame when it was really a push frame problem. So terminology is huge. um, I'm a big believer in every operator should read the operator's guide. It's the Bible. All the information is in the operator's guide, all of it. How long should I let the machine warm up before I operate it? How long should I let it cool down before I shut it off? It gives you a description of exactly what every button does, every warning light. You talk about getting the cat off the hill, Parker, was something that you wanted to touch on. Um, if you don't know what a specific warning light is or what the criteria is to make that light turn on, how can you make the best decision of whether you're going to bring it off the hill or not, right? Or whether you should bring it off the hill or not.
Yeah.
So, if I touch on that a little bit, the I think as an operator, obviously maybe I'm stating the obvious. Flashlight, crescent wrench, maybe a small toolkit. Um, I'm an advocate of taking a machine as a shop boss. I'm an advocate of bringing a machine off a hill. If you have a leaky blade hose and you don't have a crescent wrench on you, do you drive it off the hill? I would say no.
I would say no
because,
too.
Right, because you could run the risk of running the tank low, the hydraulic tank. Some guys push it while the hydraulic alarm was only on for 2 minutes. But depending on the size of the leak, it could be a small leak when you got in the cat and started driving, but the hose comes looser and it becomes a bigger leak. And you can't judge on how far you could drive the cat by how long the hydraulic minimum light was on. So if you can't fix the leak, don't drive it off the hill. A hydraulic system, if you fry a hydraulic system in a Snowcat, the shop is going to hate you. It is a huge amount of work. It's costly. Management's going to hate you. I mean, it could be, a set of pumps and motors is $30,000+, and it's a week worth of work for the shop to change the pumps and motors out. You got to clean every hydraulic line, the tank, the cooler. I mean, it goes on and on. I tell the guys at Sugar Bowl, don't take a chance. If you're not sure, then don't bring it off the hill. I'd prefer to get a call at midnight and go in early and get the cat off the hill myself or with the guys, with the mechanics, to assure that we don't make the problem worse.
Yes, and if you're experienced enough to know the specifics of the situation that you're encountering, then by all means, maybe get some buy-in from everybody else. But make an effort for sure. But just let's not be a hero. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. The let's be a hero moment where you're just trying to rally the machine back to the shop. I mean, there are all kinds of solutions there. You can be brought hydro. You can be brought a hose. You can have somebody pick you up. Done that before. That's just making the best decision that's for the best interest of being safe. I think that's probably, and for the equipment for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's if a guy's been grooming a long time, he's familiar with the cat, he's educated himself to what all the warning lights actually mean and what makes them turn on. There's a little bit of comfort level in having that guy help get the machine off the hill. But again, I tell the guys, look, just we have a couple extra machines. It's like, look, just get a ride down and grab another machine. We'll get that thing off the hill in the morning. And a lot less damage happens that way. I've got some good stories about machines that have been heavily damaged because they were towed wrong. No care was taken while they were being towed, or they were driven when they shouldn't have been driven. That created a ton of work for the shop and a big cost to the ski area. So it's not worth it. And the mentality is to try and get it off the hill. And like you said, it could be the hero mentality. Some of it, they just genuinely think they're really helping the shop, but in the end, maybe it probably made it worse. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
well, I've always been an advocate for decreasing the amount of terrain that will be open tomorrow so that the machine can get brought back to the shop the next morning, and you've got more people to help you look at the issue too. There is nothing wrong with admitting that you need help at all.
Yeah. And I'm an advocate of that too. I mean, your ski area is going to open tomorrow, whether you get that run or these 2 runs done or not. You're going to open tomorrow, and people are going to ski.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think before we get too far, I want to keep talking about this, but before we get too far along, I wanted to jump into another special guest question. And it comes from the crew at Sugar Bowl: Matt Duncan, Zach Smith, and Luke Sperlin. Those are your boys, and they've got some questions for you. I will say that it was a pleasure catching up with Matt, talking shop with him, and Matt just filling me in on how much he respects you and appreciates your insight. So it was really cool to catch up with Matt. They do have a couple questions for you. The first one is, what was the most challenging mechanical issue that you have ever had to diagnose? Bit of a deep blade dive question there, but I think you got it.
Oh, man. There's been so many challenging things over the years. Had a winch. It was a 275 winch. When Bombardier introduced their first tower winch in 1995, we sold one to Kirkwood, and I had worked on PB had the 200. Their first tower winch out was the 200. I'd worked on a couple of those, so I had a little bit of winch experience, but got this cat out to Kirkwood. It was 95 was a tough year to be a Bombardier service tech. It was the first year of the MP, first year of the winch, frame design, cab was changed, the electronic platform was changed. That was a tough year. I was working hourly then, so I made a lot of money that year. Just a little side note there, but
Nice.
this winch, this particular winch, so it was the only one that was sold in the West. I think in 95, they made maybe 20 winches. It's pretty common on a first year product to only make a handful, sell a couple in each region, and kind of work the bugs out. But anyways, this it's kind of a funny story too. This particular winch, we sold it to Kirkwood actually, and they were complaining when they were going downhill, spooling cable out, that the brakes were coming on, and that the cat would just lock up, and it was pretty intermittent. And I went out there and I rode in it a couple times. It didn't do it. I went out, another night, then it would do it, but one time, but didn't have a lot of time to really diagnose anything. Like, it wouldn't stay in fault. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We would just kind of fire things back up and it would start winching again. And I fought that for probably a week. And I mean, it's bad. You get going downhill and, the winch locks up, or the brakes on the cat lock up, it's abrupt. It's very abrupt. But I talked to engineering a little bit. I talked to some of the other service techs in the Bombardier world, and got some ideas. But I started thinking about it, and it's like, the brake light on the cat's not coming on. I put a multimeter on the brake coil, that releases the brakes, and it had constant voltage. But I started thinking about it. It's when we were going pretty fast, and then it would just stand on end. It would just, and I thought, I think the winch is locking up. So then I started checking pressures on the winch brakes and the voltage to the winch brake coils, and nothing. And it's just so funny how you happen upon things sometimes. And this is some of the stuff that I try to instill in Luke and Matt and Zach, is you got to think out of the box a lot. Don't get tunnel vision. And sometimes you just get lucky. And I was leaning on the side of the cat where the hydrostatic hoses from the winch go into the frame of the cat to the pump, and with my head down, going, you effing piece of shit, I hate you, you stupid cat. This is like at midnight, like the 7th night I've been out there, and I noticed one of the hoses was hotter than shit. I mean, really like roasting hot. And I was like, man, that's weird. It's like a hydraulic restriction. And I pulled the quick couplers off and just hard plumbed it, and never had another problem. It had a faulty quick coupler. And the quick couplers, they have poppets on them, the little triangular pieces that stick out. And when you screw them together, they're backed by springs, so they close. Well, it had a weak spring. One brand new cat, brand new coupler. It had a weak spring. And when the flow in the hydraulic system, when we were going fast and the winch drum was turning fast, the flow would overcome the spring pressure and close the quick coupler.
Wow.
So, and that's nothing it's something I'd never seen. Not a very common failure at all.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
that sounds rough, John.
So part of that story, the kind of a funny part of that story, I tell the guys at the shop that, because Matt and the boys have asked, a few times, what were your worst nights? And I have my top 10 list of worst nights. Those nights where you kind of want to quit your job. That same cat, I noticed that the winch was trying to stay in stroke all the time. It had been doing it kind of intermittently. So I decided, since I got the quick coupler fixed, that I was going to fix that problem. And at the time, Bombardier was running Sauer Sunstrand pumps, and the controllers on those were not super good. And the winch pump and the tiller pump are the same, and they run the same controller. So I decided the controller was bad. So I took the cat down to the shop, and Kirkwood's shop was built in the 70s when cats were narrower, when they were only 12 feet, not 14. So you couldn't even get a cat all the way in the shop. It's snowing out, it's cold, it's windy, and I decided to change the controllers. And at that time, the winches didn't even raise; they were bolted to the frame. You couldn't raise them up, so I had to lay on my belly on the tracks, reach in there, and pull these controllers off. And hydraulic oil goes everywhere when you pull them off. And I decided I was going to take the tiller controller and put it on the winch, and I didn't mind if the tiller was turning a little bit when it was supposed to be a neutral versus the winch. If a winch is turning, it unspools the cable.
Yep.
Makes a rat nest, and you all know the deal. But anyways, I dropped the bolt down into the belly pan, one of the controller bolts, and you got to put them all in, or you got to put them all in, or they leak. And so I reached down underneath the pumps towards the belly pan to try and find this thing. And there was a zip tie, a plastic zip tie, a wire tie that somebody had cut off. And you know how sharp those suckers are when they get cut off, especially if they don't get cut off flush. Well, it ran up the front of my hand, and it hurt like a bastard. I ran it down there, and it actually cut my hand. And knee-jerk reaction, I was like, oh shit. And I jumped up, and I hit my head on the bottom of the winch. And it cut the back of my head open, and I'm like, oh, you piece of shit, blah, I'm all pissed off. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm tired. It's snowing. It's cold. And I'm like, all right. So I gathered myself, and I reached back down in there. I went to reach back down in there to try and find that bolt, and I did the exact same thing and hit my head in the exact same place. And I was like, you know what? F this cat. I'm freaking out of here. 2-hour drive to get home from Kirkwood to Reno. I just left that cat. I pulled it out of the shop,
Wow.
leaked the controller and everything, and left. But yeah, so definitely can be challenging out there. Definitely can be challenging. So
yeah. Well, Matt, Zach, and Luke have another question. They want to know what your most challenging day at Sugar Bowl has been thus far with your career there.
I transitioned from a long career on the vendor side. I did want to, I thought about when I wanted to quit traveling and stuff that I wanted to go to a ski area, and I kind of wanted to go where there was, a shop that maybe needed a little bit of help, but had some good people, a good foundation. I really liked the management at Sugar Bowl. I'd sold them cats for a number of years. So I chose Sugar Bowl, and I'll tell you, I couldn't have got a better group of guys. I mean, they're all three of them great young minds, willing to take advice, ask for help. I couldn't enjoy working with people as much as I enjoy working with those guys. So a shout out to them, and thanks to them for putting up with the grumpy old guy.
Fair enough.
Anyways, the toughest day at Sugar Bowl, I'll tell you, it was my first year. I've been there 3 years now. I also run, besides vehicle maintenance, I run snow removal and parking. And, a typical day, I could go in and there could be a cat down on the hill, and I might go help the fellas troubleshoot that, if it's an electrical problem or something that I'm well schooled in, of course, on the pre-knock machines. Then I got to make sure parking's set up and that everybody shows up for parking. If it's snowing, I got to make sure snow removal's doing the right things, so that we have enough parking for the day. And there's just some days, Parker, it's crazy. There's days that are super smooth, and then there's days where just everything blows up, just everything, and it's nonstop. It comes at you all day. There's no in between. It's either smooth or it's just shit happening all day. But we had a particular day. We had a record February. We had over 20 feet of snow in the month of February. This was my first year. So, the snow removal equipment's running around the clock. The cats are running around the clock. And just running tons of hours on everything. Well, this particular day, it had been snowing hard for like 3 days. And I got in, we had a couple cats down on the hill. I think couple pieces of snow removal equipment had gone down. The snow removal guys were behind. And it was just one phone call after another. We had a blower go down. I don't even remember everything that happened. I think we had a chain come off and wrap around the axle of one of the plow trucks. And this whole day, it just couldn't end. And I remember about a little bit after lunchtime, I was sitting in the parking lot in my truck and just shaking my head like, what the hell did you get yourself into? Because Sugar Bowl, we don't always have the largest snowpack, but we get the most snow. There's a lot of years where we get the most snow in North America. It'll snow 4 feet and then, a foot will melt 2 or 3 days later. But, I think our average is almost 600 inches a year. It's just crazy. But, yeah, but anyways, just things were coming at me all day. I think one of the snowblower operators hit a car, broke a window with snow. But we also take care of, besides plowing the parking lots, there's a highway that runs to Sugar Bowl. It's called Old Highway 40, and it runs from Truckee to the Sugar Bowl parking lot. It basically runs adjacent to Interstate 80. The main freeway now. It's the old highway between Sacramento and Reno before they put the interstate in. We do the snow removal. The county doesn't want anything to do with it. It's a county highway now. And they'll just close the gates when it's snowing, but it makes it harder for our guests and our employees to get to the ski area. So we do the snow removal on that stretch of road, and it's treacherous. We had the road started sliding. It's rock cliffs on one side, rock walls on one side, and cliffs on the other side. And the snow started sliding off the rock walls, and blocking lanes, and we'd have to go down there and clear it out. and that's the indicator really to close that road until the snow stops and it's safe to go back through there with blowers and blow it all out. Um, and I was just learning all the signs of when it's time to close that road, and we decided to keep it open until the employees left. And I had a guy down at the bottom on chain control, and the night shift for snow removal comes on at 7 o'clock at 7 p.m. So at 7, I asked the night shift supervisor to go down. I said, look, the road is bad. We got one of the guys down there on chain control. Can you go run down there with a loader and just kind of clear a path and get him back up here? And he agreed. He said, yeah, I'll go down and do it. And on the way back up, we had a huge slide, and it was a 950 cat loader, a pretty good sized loader. And that slide pushed that loader over onto a guardrail. 2 tires were hanging over the guardrail, about a 200-foot drop.
Holy cow.
And yeah, and he was stuck in the loader. He couldn't get out on the cliff side, and the other side was covered in snow. It took us about 5 hours to get him out of there. We had to.
Wow, John.
It was brutal. But when I got the call that this had happened, I got in my pickup truck and my wipers quit working. And it's a blizzard. I mean, it's a Sierra blizzard. And you worked at June, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Like zero visibility.
Yep.
So the wipers quit working on my truck. I was wet from pulling cars out all day, wet and cold. So I jumped in our plow truck. It's basically a brand new Kenworth. I jumped in that thing, and it had water in the airlines apparently, and the brakes froze, so I couldn't get the brakes released. I couldn't get to the guy. And I mean, it was just, it was just a horrible day. And Matt and the boys, I know they remember that day. That was hard on me. It was hard on me personally, because I felt like I endangered that guy's life. So, I'm a lot more diligent about getting that road closed when it starts sliding.
God, man, that's just heavy. And it doesn't matter if you're, I guess, just people in general, whatever task it is, doesn't necessarily have to be a ski resort, but just like you were saying a second ago, I mean, that area up there gets so much snow. And so the game plan can probably change daily, nightly, hourly. It always does. Every ski resort doesn't have a one-size-fits-all plan, and so you've got to be able to adjust immediately on the fly. I'd be curious to know how you got the guy out. I mean, that's definitely there's probably some creative thinking that has to happen there in order to get that guy out of that situation, because cliff, snowed-in road, what happens and what goes down to get that guy out? That's heavy.
Yeah, no, it was brutal. It was brutal. But yeah, he's the guy Brad. He had a lot of years at Sugar Bowl experience in snow removal. Tough guy. It changed his mind. He didn't like closing the road because once we close it and we don't touch it, it becomes very difficult to reopen. We just have to run the blowers down there and push it off and sand it. It takes 6 guys, about 8-10 hours to get it reopened if we get a big dump. But so Brad liked to keep it open and just keep it clean. He'd rather just stay on it, keep it clean. And after that, he was like, he's telling me, homeboy, just close. He called me Scooter. He'd say, Scooter, just go ahead and close. I'd call him and say, hey, I'm thinking about closing the road. What do you think? And after that incident, he told me, he'd be like, Scooter, just go ahead and close that road. It was funny. The funny part was I tried to stay on the phone with him while the other guys were trying to dig it out. We had to use a grader. We got a big John Deere grader, and we had to blow behind it, and then we hooked a chain up and tried to pull it with the grader. And his son also worked on the crew, and his son was freaking out. And I let his son start calling the shots, but because it's family, he's going to get his dad out of there safely. But it was funny. They actually had to back up that grader and take a running start, and it finally popped it off the snow and got it back onto the pavement. So that was a crazy. It was a horrible day, and it ended even more horrible.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I had no idea what to expect.
I'll tell you
from them for questions, but that was a doozy of an answer. Damn.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Parker, coming from the vendor side and being around skiers, for as long as I had, I thought I knew the fight, but when you live it, it's a whole different ball game, man.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of respect for guys that have done it for a long time at the ski area level, because it can be a battle.
Yeah, it can. That's heavy. We were catching up. I know we've talked about. You may have mentioned it previously, but I know we were catching up offline, and you were bringing up the points of a heavy-handed operator versus a light-handed operator. How the wear and tear on the machine changes, the process of moving material changes or is different, but I'd love for you to talk about that and your experiences around other operators, what you learned about the machines and what the machines look like.
Well, yeah. So yeah, and it's a big deal. It's something that I've noticed that I've just learned over the years from the experience. But I mentioned that each cat has a personality, but it can acquire that personality from how it's being run. And what I mean by that, I'm big on preventative maintenance, and we can bring certain machines in the shop where you can tell that it's being run hard. And there's guys out there that can get a lot of work done and be hard on the machine. Those are the guys that I call heavy-handed. And there's guys out there that can get a lot of the same amount of work done or more and be easy on the cat. And it shows on the vehicle. It shows in the frame, the tracks, less blown hoses, because you're not stressing the hydraulics as much. So an example, Parker, that I like to give is, if you see a guy doing a push project and, he's got this humongous blade of snow, you can see his hand going back and forth on the blade joystick, because the cat's bogging and he's picking the joystick up to maybe get a little less of a bite, so there's black smoke puking out of the exhaust stack. That guy's biting off way more than it can chew, and he's stressing the cat extremely hard, right? But then you got another guy doing a similar push project. He's taking maybe half as much snow, but he's moving it very efficiently, very quickly. But the cat's not straining. You follow what I'm saying?
Following.
That's a light-handed guy. You can see the difference in the machines. The light-handed guy's machine, it doesn't blow hoses. It needs less track work. Even pumps and motors. A guy that's heavy-handed is going to wear out the hydrostatic pumps and motors way faster than a machine that's being operated easily. So, I'll give you something funny here. Was Delvin the shop foreman at Bachelor when you were up there the first time? Did you ever meet Delvin?
I don't think I did. It was shop foreman was Rick Myers. So, yeah.
Rick, yeah. So Rick took over when Delvin left. Yeah, he was there in the early '90s. I forget what year he retired. He was there a long time, but Delvin was a logger by trade, Central Oregon. Owned log trucks at one point. Logger mentality, big old hands. When he shook your hand, he crushed your hand. Big thick neck. Old school guy, old school all the way. I remember when we brought the first cat to Bachelor that had rear, lift frame steering, so you could steer the tiller side to side. And I was all proud of it, and I was showing it to Delvin, and he says, "What'd you do that for?" I said, "What do you mean? It makes for better product." And he says, "John, they didn't have it before, and they don't need it now." That's what he used to tell me. But my favorite saying from Delvin was, he said, "You take 250 horsepower and you wrap it in tinfoil, it's going to be a piece of shit." So think about that for a minute. We're giving the operator a lot of horsepower. These new cats, the new Bisons, they're, the new PBs, they're over 400 horse. And they're built extremely lightweight so that they'll climb, and they'll turn, and, but they got a lot of power to push snow. And, you can't put big, thick, heavy frames under them because they'll be too heavy. They won't have any flotation, right? So nowadays you're taking 400 horse and you're wrapping it in tinfoil, right? And does that give the guy the ability to be hard on the machine? It absolutely does. It's not built like a, like a D9. You know what I'm saying? That's got a lot of power, but it's got the frame and the platform to back it up. You can't build a snowcat like that. So it all comes down to training, knowledge of the machine. If you're running the machine properly and efficiently, it's going to last a long time. It's going to cost less for the resort. You're going to have much more uptime. The machines that are being run hard, they're in the shop all the time. They're costly to operate. But what did Binnell say in his podcast? What's your number one priority? Get the machine back to the shop. If I had a good night for Binnell, was to get the machine back to the shop.
Yeah, it was. Moving right along, we do have another special guest question for you from Mr. Ryan Gage. I will play that for you now.
Mr. Swartz, I'm so grateful for our friendship and the adventures we've shared over the years, both through ski resort, on-hill things, different conferences that we've taken part in, and our phone calls that you and I would have at all hours of the day and night. I've got a couple different specific situations in my head, but I'm curious, and my question is to you: what is a situation or two that really stick out in your mind through our years working together?
What a great and passionate ski area, ski business passionate guy. I mean, you won't meet anybody that's more passionate than Gage. I remember he got to a period where he was a little burnt out at Mount B, and he decided to leave and go back to his construction his construction background for a while. And I just told him, I said, dude, it's not you. And I told him, you'll be back. You'll surface somewhere. And I was so happy to hear that he had gone back to Mount Bachelor, because that's his passion, So lots of great moments with Mr. Gage. There's one situation that stands out, not so much grooming related, but I had decided to. It was the week before Christmas, and we'd been out delivering. We had a big sales year, and for whatever reason, the Oregon resorts took cats sooner. All my first deliveries were always Meadows, T-Line, Bachelor, and I hadn't been back up there since I dropped off new equipment. People were already running the equipment, obviously by Christmas time. And so I decided to take a trip to Oregon right before Christmas to visit customers. And I took off out of Reno. It was snowing. I had to put my truck in four-wheel drive when I left Reno, and I didn't take it out of four-wheel drive till I got home. The West was just getting pounded. Anyways, it was a marathon trip. I went to Meadows, T-Line, went to Bachelor. I wanted to meet with the GM at Bachelor because I thought there might be an opportunity to get another cat in there after they got open. And I got put off. He had a meeting that ran long. That something else came up, some situation on the hill. So this is the day I was trying to go home. And I had parts for Willamette Pass in the back of my truck that I needed to deliver. Anyways, I got out of Bachelor super late, went to Willamette, tried to just dump the parts and leave. The owner, Tim Wiper, another great guy, he wanted, you gotta come have some lunch, come up to my office. We got to talk, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I got out of Willamette at like 5:00, and it's 6-7 hour drive home, especially in the snow. And, I took off. I didn't eat very good all day. I drove through the A&W in Lapine. You've probably been there, Parker.
I have, yes.
Got a burger and like a supersized root beer. Yeah, hadn't really drank any water or anything all day. But anyways, I got to Alturas. It stopped to get gas, and Alturas, between Bend and Reno, it's kind of halfway, and so it's kind of the last stop before the stretch home. And I had to be home because my youngest was skiing Buddy Warner, and I was co-coaching her ski team, and they had a race the next morning, and so I had to be home. So I was pushing to get home. But anyways, I stopped in Alturas, and there's no phone coverage on the way in there. And my service manager from Prenot, he tried to call a couple times. So I stopped to get gas, and I jumped out of the truck, put the gas nozzle in, and then I stepped to the back of the truck to call Jeb, and all of a sudden, man, out of nowhere, the world starts spinning. My head starts spinning, and I knew I was going down, and I reached for the gas pump to hold myself up while I passed out, and I hit the corner of the gas pump right above my left eye.
What?
Yeah, it cut it open. I woke up on the ground. Of course, the ground's all wet because it's been snowing. And this guy came over, and he's like, "Dude, are you okay? Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, fuck, I got dizzy and passed out." And I felt my arm was all wet in my shirt, and I kind of was like, "What's that all about?" And then I felt like water running off my forehead, and so I put my hand on my forehead, and I looked, and it was all bloody. My hand was all bloody. So it kind of flayed my eye open. And anyways, this guy picked me up. It was so funny, Parker. He picks me up. It's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I just got dizzy." And his wife starts yelling from their car, "He's been drinking. Call the sheriff. Call the sheriff." And I'm like, "Lady."
Whoa, this is getting heavy.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, "I haven't been drinking." I said, "I don't know why. I just got dizzy and passed out." So anyways, the guy looks at me, and he says, "You're not bleeding that bad." He said, "If I were you, I'd just go in the bathroom and wash your face and gather yourself." I'm like, "All right." So then I was all nervous to drive. And, I'm like, "Man, what do I do?" Shit. And Gage calls. Yeah, right at that time. So I'm telling Ryan what happened. Yeah, I'm like, "I don't know what to do, man. I need to get home." And he's like, "Dude, do not drive. Dude, go get a motel room." And I'm like, my eye, Parker's all poofed out. It's already starting to turn black and blue. And I'm like, nobody's gonna rent me a room. I'm gonna have blood all over the pillowcases and stuff. He said to just stay on the phone and talk to me for a bit. I want to make sure you're okay. I mean, this is what a great guy he is. The dude sat there and talked to me for 45 minutes or an hour. He convinced me to try and get a motel room. And so finally I told him yes, but I just took some aspirin. I got a couple Gatorades. I downed the Gatorades. I started thinking maybe I was just dehydrated. And I started driving. Well, he called back to make sure I got a room. And I'm like, "No, I'm heading home." Anyways, I set the cruise on 55. I think it's 65 out there, but I set it on 55 just to go slower in case I started getting dizzy again. But there's that little town South Alturas called Likely. I look down and I'm doing 75. Well, who's coming the other way? California Highway Patrol.
Dude.
So, yes, flips the U. He pulls me over. So he says, "License and registration." So I'm like, "Great, now I'm going to get a ticket." And then he's like, "I didn't say I was going to write you a ticket. Just hang tight." So he let me off. And he was actually really cool. He came back and he just said, "Hey, there's 3 of us working tonight between here and the state line." He said, I've called the other guys. If you don't feel good, just pull over. They're gonna watch out for you. So that was pretty cool. But Gage called me probably once an hour until I got home, just to make sure I was doing okay. Pretty amazing guy. That's one of the big things that stands out. I don't know if that's the answer Ryan was after. Anyways, I told the cat that day, so it all ended well.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
Shout out to Gage for contributing the special guest question. I want to hit the Tier 4 bison stuff with you just because that had to have been a highlight, I would imagine, correct, in your career?
Right from the very beginning, I was involved in that whole process from concept on paper I would say the highlight of my career being that involved in the Tier 4 Bison and the influence, I think that one of the most rewarding things was after all of the meetings, the concept, the prototypes at Timberline, to see the finished product and what an amazing machine that is. Um, that that makes me pretty proud.
I bet, man. That's an awesome accomplishment and being a part of that team. I got some rapid fire questions for you. First question is, what was your favorite resort to work with in your career?
Wow. Yeah, that again, that's so tough because there's so many great resorts out there. There was, I could pick something about every resort that I went to that I really enjoyed. To pick a favorite's kind of tough, but one that stands out. I did a lot of training, a lot of service training in the early years, and I helped other regions. In particular, I would go to Salt Lake and help with their yearly service school, and we held it at Deer Valley many times, and which is just a top notch, wonderful resort. It's an amazing place, but I really latched on with the guys there at Deer Valley, the shop guys, and always got the red carpet treatment from them. And when the Olympics were in Utah, I was chosen to go out and be on the support team. You might remember that Bombardier sponsored the Olympics, both with Snowcats and snowmobiles, Ski-Doo snowmobiles. And I was actually slated to go to Snow Basin. That's where the downhill events were. And there was 13 or 14 winch cats at Snow Basin to build those venues. And I was one of the top winch guys in the company. So I was supposed to go there. And the guys from Deer Valley, they talked to the regional manager for Prenoth, or for Bombardier at the time, in Salt Lake. And they said, hey, we want Swartz here. We want, because they did the, I think they did the mogul events and the aerial events at Deer Valley, and they convinced him to send me to Deer Valley. And they called me. The shop manager called me, and he said, "Look, I know you're a busy guy, but we really want you here to support the equipment that's here. We got you all set up." They actually set up an office. They said, "We know you're a busy guy and you got other stuff to do. You got to run your region," but they set an office up with a desk and my own phone and just red carpet all the way.
Wow.
Class act. So certainly they're in my favorite list.
Very cool. Very cool indeed.
And I hate to say that because they were out of my region and I didn't sell them Snowcats, but just to anybody that's listening that I sold Snowcats to, I love all the resorts.
Fair call.
There you go.
Yeah, fair call indeed. Question number 2, changing a grouser or changing a hydro hose?
Oh my God. Parker, I hate track work. There's nothing worse. Ice and snow dripping in your face, stripped bolts. It depends on the hydraulic hose, though. There's some hoses that are really easy to change and some that are a major, major pain in the ass. So neither one of those things could be a lot of fun. So that's a hard one to answer there. It depends on what hose is blown. It's kind of funny when I was working at Heavenly, when I got my first Snowcat job, when I really wanted to go to work for Piston Blade. I fell in love with Snowcats and I was like, man, this is really cool. I really wanted to work for the manufacturer. I started to get to know the PV guys, started hounding them. That's how I wound up getting a job with a vendor. But one of the driving things behind that was all the track work. I'd come in early and try and get up the tram early. Heavenly shops up on the hill. I'd come in early and try and find a cat that needed diagnostic work and try and stay away from the track work, because Heavenly had a big fleet at the time. It was about 25 cats. And there was a lot of track work, especially towards the end of the season.
Yeah, so picking the diagnostic work got you out of the track work.
I'd much rather do diagnostic work any day than track work.
Okay, question number 3, which generation Prenoth machine is your favorite?
Oh boy, I think I answered that kind of. The most rewarding thing was obviously to see the Tier 4 Bison finished, and what a really nice machine that is. Right, right out of the gates, not a lot of problems. But, you know, the first Bison, when Prenoth first bought us, and we converted a 350 into a Bison, so xenon lights, Rexroth pumps, you know, uh, constant up down pressure instead of the old accumulator method. Um, the tier 3 Bison, the black and silver 350 Bisons, those were really good machines, very, very reliable. We still have a couple at Sugar Bowl, and they just run and run and run. But my favorite machine is the tier 4 Bison X.
Right on. Moving right along. Question number 4. What is some of the best advice that you have been given in your career? And I think you could take this anywhere. Shop management advice, operator advice, life advice, wherever you want to go with it, but best advice.
You know, I don't know if I have anything as deep as some of the other guys that have been on the podcast, because there's been some good answers to this. But I think one that stayed with me for a long, long time, I talked about at the beginning of this episode, that, you know, I went to work for my neighbor. You know, he had a shop, and he took me under his wing, you know, to go sweep the floors and clean cars or whatever. But when he started to teach me how to wrench, you know, I was young, had a little bit of a temper, and when things weren't going right, I'd, you know, pitch a little bit of a fit. And, you know, he pulled me aside and he said, listen, he said, you're going to go a long ways if you take this one bit of advice. He said, when things aren't going good, and you know, you can't get a spark plug to start in the head or whatever it is, he said, you take a 10-minute break. And he said, I guarantee you, when you come back, that spark plug will go in. And I've used that for my whole career. And it's so true. When shit's going bad, just step back and take a breath and, you know, calm yourself down, collect yourself, and then go back with a good attitude, and things will go better.
Well, I don't know, man. I think that's pretty profound. I think being able to realize that you need to walk away to get a fresh perspective, that's good advice, man.
Right. Yeah. And I got another piece of advice, because I always had a hard time saying no in many different ways. You know, if people wanted me to stay, if I went to, say, Mount Bachelor to do a warranty job, and Rick Meyer says, you know, dude, hey, we're having problems with this other cat, but I had appointments for the next day. You know, we're having problems with these other cats. They weren't really warranty, whatever. I'd stay at Bachelor for hours and try and help the mechanics figure stuff out, you know, and then I'd just ruin myself for the next day or whatever. That's just one example, but, you know, I always tried to go the extra mile for everybody, and sometimes it creates burnout. And I got a piece of advice from somebody that you know, that I really respect, and he said, John, you need to learn to say no sometimes. And I think it was Cooper that brought it up in his podcast about, you know, the demands of getting a park built in a certain time frame that's unrealistic. You know, so it applies in that aspect as well, you know, where sometimes you got to stand up and say, hey, we're not going to get that done in 2 days or 3 days. It's not deep advice, but it's so true.
It's so true, because the industry as a whole right now, and you can apply it to the snow world, or you can apply it to whatever, but there's always an expectation for a deliverable. There's a deadline. There are people that want to do projects. There are people that want to be a part of whatever it is that you're building. And so you want to be the hero, right? You want to be, like we've talked about already on this, you want to be the hero. You want to be the rock star. You want to be successful, whatever that definition of success is for you. And sometimes saying no can be that success, because if you can back up and punt and reboot whatever it is and give yourself time to have that time put towards something that really needs to get done, realistically, I think more times often than not, you put yourself in a position to get the correct deliverable delivered. And I'm guilty of it too, where it's like, yep, we can do that. All right, absolutely. Let's jump in there, all hands on deck. And then not only are you exhausted, but if you've got anybody else with you that's doing the work too, then they're burnt out as well. So maybe where was something in an instance in life where the blade dove too deep or just maybe something where you're talking about with that work-life balance piece that you learned from that you can share as well?
In their early years with Bombardier, the BR 400 Plus came out when I first started, and it was an amazing machine. They had gone to a fiberglass cab. They had lightened the machine up a lot. They had gone to a fiberglass cab. They went to the Cummins, B series engine, which was a lighter, more powerful engine, good fuel economy. So things took off. I think we were budgeted to sell 3 cats our first year. We sold 18. And it just took off from there. And we just never had enough help the first 10 years. And so I was just being pulled in a lot of directions. So I was in Southern Cal. I went to Bachelor. Then I got home, and Hoodoo had bought a machine, and the fan came apart and went through the radiator. So, I wasn't home an hour, and from being on the road for 10 straight days. And I think it was right around Valentine's Day, and I hadn't seen my significant other in 2 weeks, and I was looking forward to a little bit of time home. And, I got asked, can you go back up and get Hoodoo running? And I was like, yeah, we got to keep them running. We got to keep them happy. And I went up there, and, it wasn't good for my home life. I was getting burnt out. I missed Valentine's Day when I promised, my other half that I was going to be home. In the end, it's not worth that. Hoodoo would have opened and still would have got the hill groomed. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I'm picking up what you're putting down there. Well, John, I just want to take a minute and say thank you for taking the time to jump into the virtual booth with me here on the Blade Dive. It means the world to me, and I think your contributions to the industry don't go unnoticed. I know that takes a lot of effort to kind of walk through your career, talk about it, discuss your highs, your lows, your big takeaways that you'll never forget, and some of the things that you'd prefer to forget. But thank you for what you've done.
I enjoyed it, Parker. You're doing a wonderful job with these. They're all very interesting, very, very well done, and important. They're important. It's important to the industry for people that are up and coming. To be able to, the massive amount of experience that you've brought on here, for people to be able to listen to and gain some knowledge. Excellent job.
Big thanks to John Swartz again for being this week's Blade Dive episode. One of the things that I really enjoyed hearing about from John was his perspective on kind of being the hero. Sometimes the decision that you think is in the best interest of everybody isn't necessarily what you need to go with. Big thank you to Peyton and Cody for their contributions to the push road question of the day. 700 machines. It's crazy number. Okay, everybody knows the deal by now, but don't be a dick. Please fill your machine up with diesel at the end of your shift.